Well, that's the breaking story of the morning, really, the resignation of outgoing DA leader Mmusi Maimane from both the party and parliamentary processes. He said yesterday that he was going to stay on in Parliament. Here's a tweet that he sent out this morning. I've worked tirelessly to build the project of One South Africa for All. It's been my greatest honor to serve the people of South Africa and will continue to do so. I have today resigned from the DA and Parliament. Thank you to the people of this country for your faith in our nation. God bless South Africa, said like a pastor at the end there. Let's bring in Mike Siluma, who joins us this morning. You were here with us on Monday and Herman Mashaba resigned, and now you're here. And just a few, almost an hour ago, we were told DA leader Mmusi Maimane has also resigned from party and from Parliament. Your reaction?
You know, when the last time we spoke, you and I, on Monday, we were talking about the sequence, the likely sequence of events to deal with the confusion, the apparent confusion or the conflict in the party. And you were saying, are we likely to see a clarity and a clarity of policy anytime soon? And I said to you, highly unlikely, because what needs to happen is that some people have to leave the DA before you get to that point. And this is really what has happened.
Yep. Mike, you foresaw this. You saw this coming, isn't it? But why did it take this long? Wouldn't you prefer Mmusi Maimane to have said it then, when he was raising the hand of Herman Mashaba? No. I think that there are other developments that would have been happening in the background. But I think that the person who precipitated this is actually Herman Mashaba with his resignation, because from the moment that Herman Mashaba left, remember, Herman Mashaba is one of the strongest supporters of Mmusi Maimane in the DA. And from the moment that he left, I think that Mmusi Maimane felt that, you know, it was not going to be possible to continue. And remember, they both significantly have complained separately about being undermined. And I think that they were facing the same forces. It's not as if they've got separate battles that they were fighting. I think that it was the same battles with the same formation in the DA that they were faced with.
You're talking about a lot of developments, and one of them was the organizational review report that came out very scathing on Mmusi Maimane, saying he's indecisive and not giving proper direction. Was it an honest report?
I think there was a stratagem in the background that was unfolding, and I think that the what I call the racial liberals in our body politic are not just sitting in the DA; they are sitting in many different places. Some are in the Freedom Front Plus, some are in the Institute of Race Relations, some are in the DA. So the stratagem involved dealing with the likes of Mmusi Maimane across the board. So where you have the review panel saying the things that you're saying, being very highly critical of Mmusi Maimane's leadership, you had, even ahead of that, the Institute of Race Relations saying that all these, what they call racial nationalists, that they must be expelled from the party. And by that they were referring to all the, Phumzile van Dam spoke about the campaign against opinionated black leaders. So it's all of those people, Mmusi Maimane, Phumzile van Dam.
So now the specific people that they wanted to leave have left. James Self is gone, the CEO is gone, Mmusi Maimane is gone. The title of the report was "What's Wrong with the DA and How to Fix It." What's next for the Democratic Alliance?
Well, what's next for the Democratic Alliance is that I think the fallout is not over yet. I think you're going to see a couple more resignations of people who would have been sympathetic to Mmusi Maimane's position. And once that has happened, it would mean that the black people who remain in the DA will know their place, essentially. They might want, some other people might want to stay because they've got nowhere to go, or they've got financial pressures, etc. for now. So, they will just lie low and, sit in, know their place, sit in the corner. But essentially what has happened is that the election, the elevation of Helen Zille has marked it's a watershed moment, actually, in recent DA politics. And it is actually turning the clock back for the DA.
Let's talk about the race relations within the Democratic Alliance. And Mmusi Maimane yesterday said that during the 28th Federal Congress, he sponsored what was known as the diversity clause. And he says that the DA can never be just for one race group. Then he talks about one South Africa and the DA not being the optimum vehicle or the ideal vehicle to carry this vision forward. What does that say about the Democratic Alliance and the race relations in the Democratic Alliance? And do you see this pushback in terms of this diversity, so-called diversity clause there?
No, I think that it is not possible, even though everyone in the DA talks about diversity, but it is not possible for anyone to talk about diversity without talking about race. So I think that the crux of the conflict between Mmusi Maimane and the racial liberals in the DA is that, and you'll see in both his and Herman Mashaba's resignation, they refer to race. He said that he wanted to get especially black people to get to join the DA.
Yeah.
I mean, he was that upfront about it. So the problem is that they were insistent on recognizing race when the rest of the other people, the racial liberals, were actually not wanting to do that. I mean, we discussed this on Monday with Delphi, the agenda behind the refusal to talk about race. There's a much broader agenda that relates to resisting change in South Africa, basically.
So now political analyst Khaya Sithole is also joining us in this conversation via Skype. Khaya, very good morning and thanks for joining us on short notice. What are the issues? Is it bad leadership, as the diagnostic report says? Is it race? Or is it just lack of policy? What are the problems at the Democratic Alliance?
Good morning. I think it is actually an intersection of the three issues that you mentioned, in that it was probably bad leadership, particularly around the policy regarding the race relations that the DA wanted to maintain internally and with South African stakeholders. So, of course, the key question that the DA has always battled with is what exactly can a party that is seen by so many people to be really an old cohort of old white men in particular, how can that party transform its image to make it more appealing to the electorate, particularly in a country where the majority of the electorate is black? And I think what we wanted to be able to see is that it had to then start formulating and adopting policies that embraced as much of that electorate, of the alienated electorate as it could. And I think they've struggled to do that. And of course, the big problem here is that if your core constituency, being the traditional white voters, the liberals as they call themselves, if they are the ones that fund your party, it is difficult for you to then write and champion policies that they themselves do not particularly agree with. And I think in the DA's deliberations, the question was always there of how do we actually go out and reach and embrace more black voters without alienating our core constituency. And unfortunately, during the era of Mmusi Maimane, they never got the right recipe. And you saw that being manifest in the May general elections, where suddenly they started losing ground. And that was something that obviously prompted them to start introspecting. And unfortunately, the results gave them the indication that they are not where they ought to be or where they wish to be.
So, Khaya, they lost Mmusi Maimane. Helen Zille yesterday said that they remain committed to working towards this one South Africa for all. But she said that it's an enormously difficult path, which very few countries have achieved. What new can the Democratic Alliance do now in order to convince the electorate that they are a diverse party?
It's very difficult for the Democratic Alliance to actually even start communicating that message, because remember, the very elevation of Helen Zille back into the power hold of the DA is something that is going to bite them hard. And I think the problem that we've always had with Helen Zille is that she lacks the type of diplomacy that a party that says it wants to achieve the things that the DA wants to achieve, a party that wants to reach out to the disaffected voters, whether they be from the Freedom Front, from the ANC, from the EFF, a party with those particular ambitions can cannot afford to have a person so closely associated with it being seen as to be so undiplomatic on matters concerning race and race relations in the country. And that is a big problem. Now, the DA's question must be, why is it that within its own structures, Helen Zille still holds this particular sway? Helen Zille is still able to make these particular comebacks when the rest of the electorate is of the opinion that this is probably not the person you want to put as the face of any party, particularly when you're trying to reach out to new constituencies. That is their great dilemma. Now, when they then did give her this position in the past week and then said that she must be the federal chairperson, then the question should have been very, very clear to them that you're now going to have to go and explain to the people that you spent the past 4 years trying to reach out to, whether that was successful or not. At least the effort was there. Now you're going to have to go and explain to the same people that this person who has this particular views about colonialism, for example, who has this particular views about race relations, has been entrenched as a solid leader of the party, and they still want you to vote for us. So the problem started when they even gave Helen Zille the pathway to run for a position in the leadership, because it really then forced them to actually ask themselves a difficult question of how can you possibly go back to the electorate and say this is one of our top party leaders when she has actually created such a bad track record of alienating people, whether it was intentional or not. The reality is that that's what she has done over the past few years.
Mike, in a moment, I'd like you to tell us why you think Helen Zille still holds this influence within the Democratic Alliance. But let's just give an opportunity now to our viewers and look at your thoughts about this development. Breaking story this morning, Mmusi Maimane announcing that he has resigned from both party and parliament in terms of being a party official in parliament. Let's take a look at some of those social media contributions. HC Reigns, I think, saying, Mr. Maimane, because of you, I once gave my votes to our DA. I have no regrets, though, because I believed in your vision of one South Africa for all with you at Herman Mashaba as well and at Ethel Trollip. Gone. I have no more confidence in the party. Wishing you all the best, sir.
I am what I am, says, thank you for your vision, dream, leadership and staying true to yourself. To quote what I tweeted to Herman Mashaba, what defines us is not how we fall, but how we rise. Stay blessed and take some time out with your family. I look forward to your next journey.
I suppose that is the big question now. What's next? Peter saying, you can leave with your head held high in that you fought a good fight. There are no scandals or corruption cases following you, which is more than can be said of most South African politicians, which is probably why you can leave freely.
And Nazir says, you still have a huge role to play, my brother. Love and respect you always. I guess, as we were mentioning, what role can Mmusi Maimane play in politics, in the landscape of South Africa? What do you think? Let's just read
There's one last tweet in Khauza saying, political differences aside, farewell, brother. All the best on the new chapter of your life, upwards and onwards. And this predictably could have been the response yesterday if he had sent out, this is what people were waiting for yesterday.
Yeah. Mike, what's next for Mmusi Maimane? I guess the simple question is, what's his options?
No, he's still young. And I think he could go the route of Lindiwe Mazibuko. He could set up an institute. Lindiwe Mazibuko went off and started a leadership institute. He can go off and do a New South Africa Institute that advances what he believes to be, the direction in which the country should be going. But Desiree,
about Helen's influence.
About Helen's influence. I think it would be a mistake for us to isolate Helen Zille and hold her up as the arch-racist, or the only white person in South Africa, in all of South Africa, who is against change. I think that we need to look at the view. We very seldom explore the views of white South Africans in South Africa, in our country. And I think if you look at what the review panel said about white voters who went to the Freedom Front Plus, we need to explore why that is happening. And I think that is happening because we've got so many outstanding issues since 1994 that were never revisited. And one of them is race, and the other one is economic and social inequality. And what is happening is that, and I don't know if you saw the Douglas Gibson overnight said that, I think he was speaking to Stephen Croches, if I'm not mistaken. He said that white people are sick and tired of this harping. He calls it the harping on racism. So essentially, it seems to me that there's a large proportion of white people in South Africa who don't want this talk of racism, and they want it to be suppressed and to go away, so that we can go on with this mythical story, of a rainbow, the rainbow nation.
Khaya, there's a term that's been used in struggle times and terms that says ukhabula. To what extent has this process helped Mmusi Maimane ukhabula?
I'm not particularly sure if he feels that anything that has happened this week has been of assistance to him. And of course, the reality here is that in spite of all the drama that we've seen this week, if we were a country that was used to a culture of accountability, absolutely no one can object to the idea that Mmusi Maimane's position became untenable. If you are a leader of a political party and that political party loses significant ground under your leadership, of course, that is your primary key performance indicator, then you should actually look at alternatives. So I think that is the main thing that we must not lose sight of, that unfortunately he just hasn't delivered as a leader of the DA. Now, of course, the mechanics of how this has unfolded has meant that he actually now has a lot to learn about really how the people that he thought, he could work with for the past maybe 5 or 10 years of his political career have actually turned out to be quite a different type of animal altogether. And I think for him, the lessons that he has picked up from really how he has been treated, from really how this particular process unfolded and how it really just escalated over the past few days are lessons that he'll probably take all the way to his grave, or alternatively to a new political party, should he ever find one.
Khaya, just before we let you go, we'll come back to, we've got other news that we need to get to, but I just wanted to get a sense of, yesterday Mmusi Maimane listed a whole achievements that he's done, a whole body of achievements that he's done over the past, 4 years since he's been elected. Do you think that will hold him in good stead going forward if he decides to start another party? And subsequent to that, if he does go that route, is there enough appetite in South Africa for another Liberal Party?
Look, I think South Africans in general, as we've seen this past week, are probably also struggling with an idea of what a Liberal Party ought to represent. And I think in the DA's view, a Liberal Party ought to be one that simply says, these are the liberal values that we're championing and let's go ahead with them. But of course, a lot of our political conversations are tainted by the history of what this country was all about. And you cannot conceivably simply detach yourself from the political history of the country. And I think the DA probably just doesn't want to accept that. But going forward, the idea of Mmusi Maimane starting a new political party is for me quite far-fetched, because the key issue here is that if you want to start a particular political party, you need to have the type of grassroots appeal and the type of charisma that quite simply Mmusi Maimane doesn't have in abundance. And I think for him to then start the idea, to entertain the idea of starting a new political party will be highly dangerous. And of course, he would then have to distinguish that party from what the DA was, or at least what he thought the DA was, what the other existing parties are, and then still be able to convince voters that actually he's a changed man from what he was when he was a member of the DA. And I just don't think South Africans have an appetite for really just entertaining the idea of another party from a disaffected DA leader, particularly when you saw Patricia de Lille also champion the breakaway party. I think we've probably reached our plateau in terms of just entertaining exiled politicians, starting new movements and hoping for our votes. When they had the power to change things, they either failed to do so or they simply chickened out.
We're talking to